I'm Chris,
And I'm Kiley. And this is Redefining Resilience,
where we explore what it means to build a resilient lifestyle
so you can thrive in any and every situation.
I'm going to start today with a question, and I want you to answer, okay? I'm talking to you. So if you took your dog to a dog park,
Wait, which one?
if you took our dogs to a
Both of
dog
them,
park,
okay.
how many people at said dog park should be responsible for the dogs while you're there?
Just me.
Really? Not anybody else?
Yeah, they're my dogs.
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, and yours.
Well, I didn't go. It's just you.
Okay. So then me.
How many people at said dog park should be responsible for washing, cleaning, and feeding your dogs good food?
I don't think any of the dogs should be eating at the dog park because they'll probably fight. So none of them and me again.
Exactly.
Okay.
Those are your dogs,
Yeah. I feed
so
them.
it's not anybody else's job.
Yeah.
Now let's replace the dog park with our normal everyday existence
Okay.
and the dogs with us.
Okay.
How many people's job, other people's job is it to take care of you while you're operating in this normal life?
Probably just me again.
Whose job is it to wash and clean and feed you correctly?
Well, I'm over 18, so it's no longer my parents' responsibility. So I'm going to say me again.
Exactly. It's your job. So what does that mean?
It means I must take personal responsibility for my own outcomes in life.
Exactly. What a silly question to ask. Who's responsible for my dogs at the dog park?
Right.
That's a dumb question.
It was super silly.
It is. It is super silly. It's also equally as silly to say other people are responsible for my outcomes.
So I think today we're talking about personal responsibility.
We are. It's my favorite subject, actually.
We've mentioned it enough times. It probably makes sense to do a little bit of a deep dive here. And I don't even know where to begin with this topic because I think there's a lot of unpacking to do.
There is. So we have to decide ahead of time what you want to do with it. Right? And do we want to talk about personal responsibility in health, wealth, mindset, relationships?
I think we just have to talk about it as a concept because it applies to every facet of life.
It does. That's where I was going to go with that.
Okay.
You can't have one without the other. So it's all encompassing.
Well, first off, what is personal responsibility?
Well, I can give you my version or we can use the Googler.
God love the Googler.
The idea that people are accountable for their actions, decisions, and the consequences that follow.
I mean, that's pretty rooted in reality, I would say.
Yeah, the consequences that follow. What is yours, actually? What's your... I think everybody's heard my version of it if they've listened to a podcast. So.
I think of it as like owning your outcomes. If you don't like the outcomes you've created for yourself in whatever aspect of life, like you have to take responsibility or ownership of changing them. Because no one's going to do it for you. We're all above the age of 18, so it's no longer the responsibility of our parent or guardian to make sure that we have favorable outcomes for ourselves. It falls on us as soon as we become 18 years old. I mean,
It does.
technically, legally, by every stretch of the imagination, right?
Mm-hmm. So do you think there's like a misunderstanding of this concept in the world right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I don't know if this is backed in like any kind of science or psychology, but I think the opposite of taking personal responsibility would be staying in a victim mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like, woe is me, poor me, this is happening to me kind of talk tracks. Like, I always have the worst luck, or nothing is ever working out for me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what other, I don't think like that. So it's hard for me to even know what goes through people's minds. I do know that there were times in my life where I thought like that because like my dating or career or, you know, I felt like I was treated unfairly in certain positions. And instead of just quitting the fucking job, I just kept myself in a place of suffering, which at some point when I realized like I can't change my circumstances, I need to take responsibility for taking bold action to do something different, right? Change my environment, change the variables that are not favorable.
So when it comes to your fitness life, let's talk about personal responsibility.
Okay.
You don't have to sigh. I mean, it's not a bad thing. This is
Am
great.
I
This
in
is
trouble?
something you have to mull through because it literally feels like you're walking through 3 feet of mud because there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of data being presented to us all the time, but what do you do with the data? How do you view personal responsibility and fitness?
That's a hard one because I would say of all domains of my life, that one is probably the one that I've consistently struggled with the most. And I have realized that so many of my patterns have contributed to where I'm at in my health journey. And I will say it goes back to when I started college, and that's really when I discovered alcohol and started putting on the pounds. And I mean, the freshman 15, the sophomore 60, I don't know, like.
But just listen to those phrases, right? Like, this is why this concept is so fascinating to me, because we have, as culture seeking and acceptance seeking people, humans love culture. They love to fit inside of some kind of narrative, and they want to be accepted. So we create these little quips, these things we say, these freshman 15, the sophomore 60,
I made that one up.
men gain weight with their wives when they're pregnant. You go through a stressful situation. So what do you eat? Soul food. You eat food that makes you feel good.
Eat your feelings.
We do these things and have created these patterns for ourselves and these phrases of acceptance to allow personal responsibility to take a back seat. The issue that I see the most is that these little tiny things start from a very early age and create monstrous issues later on in life.
I think the other part of this is that if you are operating on autopilot, you don't even know what cause and effects are happening behind the scenes. So, like, when I was in college, I was very much on autopilot. I really didn't care about anything besides, like, maintaining good grades, obviously, because I knew ultimately why I was there, which was to get the degree. But secondarily, I cared about finding friends and having fun. And
Exactly.
so
You want to be accepted.
yeah, you want to be accepted. And I wasn't consciously going in there thinking, oh, I need to be accepted. I was going in thinking I want to have as much fun as I can. Like, what's my next adventure?
Yeah.
It was all good intentions, but I didn't consciously realize the patterns that I was creating were going to cause all of the weight gain, the health complications, the negative, like the unhealthy coping mechanisms. Whenever things were hard, you know, you live for the weekend to then drink your face off. And, you know, those habits I wasn't consciously aware of. I wasn't taking personal responsibility for any of those things.
I think personal responsibility is more so a intentional set of critical thinking skills.
Yeah, and I think to be intentional, you have to be consciously aware.
Or consciously, I don't know. I struggle with that phrase, you have to be aware, because you are aware. Nobody made you drink that beer.
No.
Nobody made you go to the party, and nobody made you make the decisions. So you made them neglecting on purpose the outcome of the situation, or the absence of the critical thinking skills that allow you to see the issue in the later years in your life. I don't think that we're going to create humans that have this like all-seeing eye and create this pattern that like everybody has a massive set of critical thinking skills that allows them to avoid problems. I don't think so. I think one of the biggest benefits of living in the world we live in is we have more data and we have more science to show us like this is the outcome of said decision, so we can make better decisions. But there's always going to be the human element of my drive to be accepted is going to overpower anything else. Like your drive to be accepted, like my drive to be accepted. I used to think I couldn't go to a business development anything without having a pregame and beers while I was there, because I thought this is the best social lubricant on the planet. And based on my experience, this is the way I create communication with people that I've never met.
So were you consciously aware of the decision that you were making at that time to like put poison in your body for the sake of fitting in? Were you consciously aware of that at the time?
The outcome, no, because I neglected it on purpose.
Exactly.
So not saying that I wasn't consciously making the decision to. I consciously made the decision to drink alcohol while I was there.
Yes, but did you consciously think of the ramifications of drinking alcohol?
No, I ignored them.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not stupid, right? Like everybody knows cigarettes kill you. Like people still smoke.
I'm just saying, I think that there's an element of autopilot that we get on where we just don't even, maybe it's because we don't want to see it or we want to pretend or downplay it. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Because it's not that big of a deal. That's it right there. It was because we've told ourselves that it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
The issue with it's not that big of a deal is everything is a deal. Everything has some kind of validity to it. Everything has some kind of weight. That's why this conversation is frustrating and exciting at the same time, because you can land on, I made this decision and I didn't know one time.
Yeah. What is that called? The plausible deniability?
You got one of those.
Which really means like I can give you the benefit of the doubt.
You might not have known that would end up like that.
Correct. Like, could I have known that it was going to take me years to lose the weight that I gained from all the years of drinking and have to go to therapy and do all of this work healing my physical body, my emotional self, my critical thinking skills? No. Like, I had no fucking clue.
But we also lived with less data. We didn't know. So now we know. So there's this concept in all major religions where there's one person inside of the story or parable that is allowed to see the afterlife or the angels or demons around them. Mm-hmm. And they panic. They freak out. They go, oh my God, I don't want this anymore. I've prayed for this. I've wanted this. I've asked for this. I achieved it. And now I'm so overloaded with the fact that this truth now exists that I panic. Right? They would rather die, is what it says in the Bible, than see this. So because knowledge exists, we now have to take a conscious effort to ignore it. So I'm going to say that again. Because the data exists, we are taking a conscious effort, making a conscious effort to ignore it.
I think the best example we can give of this, because obviously we're millennials, okay, no secret there.
Well,
we grew up knowing that cigarettes cause cancer.
Mm-hmm.
There was not like all of this long-term research done on alcohol consumption when we were heavy drinking. I think only recently has it been brought to the surface, and now people are starting to look for this information, and it's now coming out, and you can see because the huge alcohol production companies are now producing non-alcoholic versions of the drinks that we very frequently consumed back when we were drinking alcohol. So now you're right. Like, we know the information is there. We know alcohol causes cancer, just like cigarettes. It has to go into the same category because As you every cigarette you smoke, it's not one that's going to give you cancer. It's the habit of smoking cigarettes every single day.
Yeah.
It's the habit of drinking every single weekend.
Yeah.
It's causing more damage than we previously knew, and now we know. So we can't be stupid to it anymore. We can't be ignorant to it anymore. That is true, that we have to take personal responsibility. And if you're okay with consuming alcohol, that's okay. Like, good on you. People still smoke cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not those people. That's not for me.
No.
And this isn't an episode on alcohol consumption, but that's just the best example I thought of. But then when it comes to like our health and fitness, let's say, because I think that there is still a lot of information that is either being kept on the down low. I don't know if that phrase is still cool. It's probably not.
The DL.
I think it's low key. I think that's what the kids say now. Okay, so food and our shitty processed food that we have been consuming our whole lives, most of us, is low-key killing us.
So what an interesting thing, though, right? So, like, we understand now that there's a food system that is, well, the food system. There's an A. It's the food system.
70% of the processed foods we consumed are created by, what is it, like the 7 manufacturers?
Yeah. So the food system that exists is currently operating in a way that feeds us poison on a daily basis. We know this. Let's go back a little bit. And let's go back, I don't know, to where we were in high school and like Oreos were like a normal thing in everybody's house.
Yeah, and there weren't like 72 different kinds.
No, and we just really didn't view it as like poison. We viewed it as not health food, right?
Just a snack.
So let's go back to that time frame and let's talk about personal responsibility. So when I talk to my clients about their food habits, I say, I want you to pick up the food that you're going to buy in the grocery store, and I want you to ask yourself a question out loud, because it sounds different when you say it than when you just think it in your head. Is this a stupid move or not? Is this healthy or not? Because I want you to hear it, because I want you to pick up Fruity Pebbles, and I want you to be the guy in the grocery store that goes, is this a healthy decision? Because it's so stupid. It's so crazy to think that, like, the American Heart Association, who should be fined for having that on there, labels it as a health food. That's insanity. So you have to take the personal responsibility and weigh out the things that are happening in front of you and make a choice. So we don't live in a vacuum. One, our choices and our actions affect everybody. The only reason Fruity Pebbles exists is because we keep fucking buying Fruity Pebbles. If we didn't buy Fruity Pebbles, they wouldn't exist.
It's true.
So it's our fault it's there, first off.
Look at Blockbuster. We stopped renting videos and...
Yeah, there's a normal cycle of business, right?
Yeah.
Like, that happens to all businesses over time that don't choose to change. The personal responsibility stint, and I think this is where it gets really, really hard for people, is they would rather, what do you say, be okay with being lied to than saying that they... It's
easier to believe in a lie than to believe that we've been lied to.
Exactly. So it was easier for me to pick up a box of Fruity Pebbles and go, well, the American Heart Association said it was okay. Meanwhile, I feel like shit. My life is in the pooper because I can't take care of myself. Walking upstairs hurts, which is insane to me.
Or gets you out of breath.
Yeah, or I can't get out of bed without really willing myself out of there or pumping myself full of caffeine. Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's start taking a tally here, man. Because the end game, this is where I think it gets very important and I get very passionate. Nobody can do this for you. So the only person that can do this to save you is you. The only person that can save you from bad decisions is the person making the decisions. So, like, we cannot now, under any circumstances, say we didn't know Big Pharma was pumping me full of drugs I didn't need. It's 100% fact that they are. We didn't know that, drug or food companies were pumping me full of poison. We know now. So now that you know, and now that it's out there, there's nothing left on the table but personal responsibility. There's nothing. So you either do it to save your life and help and save the lives of the people you love, or you don't, and you ruin it. I know it sounds harsh, but it's like at the end of the day, man, it all lands on personal responsibility. I can't go home to a dirty house and not clean it. I can, but there's like someone crawls all over me. If there's like any dishes in the sink, we just have to do this, Like I tell you, if we go to bed and there's dirty dishes, I have like a moral conundrum. I'm like, listen,
I sleep just fine.
I'm not gonna do them tonight. I'll do them in the morning. I know I hate doing them in the morning, but and I have to walk myself through that process. But we have to look at everything in life as my responsibility. I'm either going to make this happen. I'm either going to make this happen and it's going to benefit me, or I'm not and it's going to hurt me. And what decision are you going to make? And I don't think that we have plausible deniability anymore. I think we do for a small section of time, maybe in high school, maybe first year, second year of college. But we really don't. There's too much data.
Well, and I think this is where understanding the neuroscience behind what's going on is really important, because as much as we can say you have to take personal responsibility, you're fighting against what your brain is telling you to do some of the time.
All right. Can I lean into that pretty hard?
Yeah.
All right. So 2 systems we're going to operate on. We've talked about them a bunch.
We totally just interrupted my whole talk track here.
Okay. Here's why I want to interrupt that.
Better be good.
The 2 systems that we're operating on are limbic system and prefrontal cortex. So fight or flight mode or logical thinking skills.
Yep.
You cannot access logical thinking skills if you feed your system bullshit.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
This is literally like the chicken or the egg situation. It is, because if you think about it, if you're feeding your system shit, you're gonna be operating out of your limbic system. You're gonna be overactive with a limbic system, putting you in fight or flight mode. When you're in fight or flight mode, you can't make good decisions. You're not gonna choose the healthy things. So what do? You buy the shit, continue to feed your system shit, and you keep making shit decisions. That's how this goes.
That's if you're out of control. That's if you don't have any responsibility. That's if you've decided that your life isn't worth it, and that you say, because there has to be a point in time, there just has to. I don't understand it that people tell me that there isn't. There has to be a point in time you look in the mirror and you just go, fuck it. Because there has to. Yeah. There's no point in time that you go from a small to a quadruple X and you go, whatever, dude. I understand it's a slow fall.
Yep.
But there has to be a point where you just go, it's just not worth the effort, and I'd rather be lied to. I don't get that. I cannot comprehend it. I don't understand it. But that's the only logic train I can jump on that gives me some kind of solace that there's an answer.
I do think that there's probably a time where people are like, fuck it. And because I got to that point, and everybody has a different threshold for where they hit that point. Someone may step on the scale when they weigh 400 pounds and be like, I'm out of control. I need help. I need to figure this out. I stepped on the scale and I was almost 200 pounds. And that was when I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get into, I'm going to get out of the 100s with my weight. I know that that's not healthy.
Yeah.
5'6", and I should not weigh that much. And that was the point in which I joined a CrossFit gym and went hard with working out. And then I started meal prepping. And then I was weighing my food. I was counting my calories. I mean, I was doing everything to get the number on the scale to go down. And I think everyone's got a different threshold. And I knew at that moment in time that I hated myself so much, and I hated what I looked like. The person I saw in the mirror was like, I don't even know who you are anymore. I look at photos from that time, and it's mortifying because it was the worst time of my life, but I was also really unhappy and didn't realize how unhappy I was. That's where I think like the autopilot function is a real thing. And that's where I think we have to like display some empathy and understanding here, because not everybody has fallen in love with the gym like you. So I think
but
it's
how much grace are you going to apply to yourself? Are you going to apply more grace than the world is going to give you? Because that's the problem.
No, there was absolutely no way I was going to look at that number on the scale and be like, oh, just give yourself grace.
Well, not you specifically, because your whole example is I've reached a point where I can't take it anymore. Yeah. So I'm going to hold myself up to a level of discipline.
But
right?
I think that level is different for other people. So you got to ask yourself, like, what is the point where you're going to finally like step on the scale or like get to a point in your unhealthy relationship, right? Like, I didn't realize I was so unhealthy in that relationship until afterwards, and I got out and I was like, oh man, like that was really bad.
Yeah.
I was really not happy.
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize how unhappy I was until I removed myself from the situation, just like with previous employers. Like when I've worked for other companies, like, and I left, I was like, wow, I didn't realize the toll that was taking on me.
Yeah.
And so we have to look at our environment and take it really seriously, because our environment is a big factor in all of this. Like, what are you putting at the forefront? Because right now, at the forefront, I have this business. I have you, our dogs, the girls, family, right?
Yeah.
I've got my health, and I've got friends. And then, like, beyond that, nothing else really matters.
So it gets really complicated when we put all the variables in there. And you have to distill everything down to the bottom all the time, because if you don't do that, then like you get analysis paralysis. That's why I get really frustrated with this, because I constantly am like eliminating all the variables, and I'm like, well, what's the one thing I can do? What's the one thing I can do? What's the one thing they can do? What's the one item I can apply to this science experiment and get a positive outcome, right? So that's where you land in fitness with a lot of people. They're like, well, I can just twist my hand a little bit more and get more pinch in my biceps so I can get bigger biceps. So they end up becoming very granular with the way they view growth. So that's a lot of the times why I use that analogy, is because it's used all the time in the world that I'm in. So if we can take all of the issues of being a human and distill them down to an item that we can fix or that we can apply pressure to and it change things, it's you. You're the only consistent variable in any of them.
Yeah.
So, like, at what point in time do you decide that the only consistent variable isn't a fucking problem? That's insanity. That's pure insanity. If your relationship's falling apart, I understand there's other variables. That's why I'm saying we're going to distill it down to the one thing that you can control over your life, which is you. If you have a shit relationship, you have a bad job, you have a dog that doesn't listen, like, you're the variable. So fix it. So just spend the time on, this is one of my favorite equations, and day by day I'm adding more to this list of equations, but your output's based on your input. If your output is not something you desire, is not something you like, and is not something that is serving humanity, because your obligation is to be a good human to the rest of society. Your obligation is not to be rich or awesome or handsome or beautiful. It's to be useful. So if you're not a useful human, you're going to have a lot of problems with feeling like you matter, because technically you don't. You're just a leech on society. So once we learn to be productive and useful, we can start turning that around, and we can start saying, all right, man, maybe I can track my meals. Maybe instead of eating out, I can take that $10 and put it in my wallet and save a little bit. And you know what? I feel a little bit healthier. I'm not losing a ton of weight, but maybe I feel a little bit better. Or you know what? Maybe I should volunteer a little bit. Or maybe I should have that tough conversation with the one I love. Or you know what? My dog's peeing all over the floor. Maybe I should spend a little bit more time paying attention to him. When he starts crying, and this is directed towards me, I take him out and I maybe I baby him a little bit.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe I start understanding that the only way to change the variables in my life is to change me. That's why there's no other way for me to view this. It all comes down to personal responsibility.
I think one of the most impactful things anyone has ever told me, and it was Rena, who she is a Reiki healer. And Rena gave me some of the most valuable lessons of my life. I was seeing her during COVID and during a pretty tumultuous time in my life, professionally, personally. And Rena said, your exterior, your external world is a reflection of your internal.
Yeah, your output's based on your input.
Exactly. But when I started thinking, like, what are the things going on around me? And I was like, oh, shit. I have to work on me if I want to see improvements around me. That was really the beginning of my deep dive into personal development. And I'd always been interested in learning, but I was interested in learning to get the certification, to make me look more credible, to elevate me in status. I wanted the what do you call it?
The acronym?
No.
Letters behind your name?
What's your degree? Graduate degree. Like, what's that called?
Your diploma?
No. Grad school.
Your master's?
Yeah, so I wanted to go to grad school to get the advanced degree so that I could get a higher position and climb the corporate ladder. And like, I was so focused on me, but in a way that was more so my status in society rather than focusing on my impact in society.
So let's distill that down a little bit. You were focused on you,
but just on how others perceived me to be important.
So you were focused on you to advance the way you take from society.
Yeah.
You were advancing to take, not advancing to give. So that's where we end up in this little moral problem. Yeah. It's like, I can advance myself all the time, but if my advancement is based on how much I can get, then you will still be stuck with the same moral conundrum of a non-producer. Yeah. If you don't have fucking value, you don't have value. And we run up into this all the time with people that are like, well, you know, I'm showing myself grace today and I ate 19 fucking cookies. And you know what? I do have a problem with my wife, but I'm going to ignore it. Listen, bud. Listen, lady. It's up to you, man. Like, you made a bad decision, compounded to another bad decision, compounded to another bad decision. Like, we have to stop and listen to what's going on around us and say, listen, the only person that can affect any of this is me.
Well, and I think the other thing you have to examine is a lot of times our bad decisions are really just symptoms of other stressors that we're dealing with. So drinking wasn't the problem. It was why I was drinking. I was drinking because I was in an unhappy relationship. I was drinking because I had a job I hated that I wasn't appreciated at.
Oh.
It really, like, it's unfortunate because then we start to adopt these bad habits that really don't have anything to do with the root of the problem. They're just a coping mechanism to the origin of the problem.
But how do you find the origin of the problem? This is what I love. This is why it's so cool.
Well, one,
you have to know.
Yes, you have to go back to personal responsibility. You have to take it. It's your job to figure out what's not working in your life.
But it's also your job to figure out what you want out of life.
Yeah,
it's your job to
absolutely.
figure out what one of my least favorite words on the planet, because it's been so bastardized, is what your triggers are. What allows you to feel like or pushes you back into a pattern of self-destruction. You have to do that. I think I've heard it 15 times in the last 4 months. Well, my wife does this, so then I do this. Okay. Well, that you are not responsible for what your wife says. You're not responsible for what your boss says. You're not responsible for what I say on this podcast. You're responsible for what you do with that information and how you react to it. That's it. The world isn't yours to shun and improve and dictate. Your job is to take care of how you handle the information from the world and do something with it. Your response to the world is what the issue is. Your response to your wife yelling at you so you go drink is your fault because you choose to respond in that manner.
Well, and I think what we have to understand is the law of attraction tells us that what we give is what we get. So if you are getting things in life that you don't like, don't want, it's up to you to figure out what you're putting out that's attracting that.
So this begs the best question of this podcast. How do you start digging into personal responsibility? How do you open that door?
This is going to sound like a sales tactic, but get a coach. Like, I did not do it alone. I had so much help along the way. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching and guides throughout the process and tools and like all of the things. I mean, I got certified in emotional intelligence. That was a huge eye-opener for me. I then understood why I was having emotions that I was having and then what the impact of those emotions was. And then I also had, like I mentioned, Rena to help me start to unpack like some of the behavior that I had created when I was a child but didn't really understand. You know, why I thought the way I thought or why I behaved the way I behaved. And a lot of it was because of hard wiring that I learned and, you know, got programmed in my brain before I was even consciously aware, right? Like, we get most of our programming before we're 8 years old. So all of that was how I internalized the world as a child, and then, you know, those patterns are developed in our brain, so we continue to carry those through adulthood, and I was still operating with some really outdated models of the world.
So you didn't show up to Rena and then she just decided to start talking to you about personal responsibility and all of this.
Oh, no. I don't
So you
think she ever uttered those words.
You reached a point in time where you said something has to change, right? Like, I've exhausted all my other options. I'm tired of being tired. I'm tired of being sick. I'm tired of not looking the way I want to look.
Yeah. I just said I think I need to work on me.
Yeah, that's it right there. That's a beautiful statement. You need to work on you. I don't think you could say anything more profound as a life-changing statement than I need to work on me.
Yeah.
That's where it all starts. It's where it all starts, and that's where it all ends, is you. It's all of it.
I think if you are blaming other people for anything that's not working well for you right now, it's an opportunity for you to adopt that phrase and decide, I need to work on me.
And I know it's a lot, and I know it sounds harsh, and I know that, like, if you're going through something that's like epic right now. It's going to be really fucking hard to listen to you and I say, or anybody say, oh, listen, bud, you just need to work on yourself. You got to understand there's no other way out, though. Mm-hmm. That, I think, is the most important concept to learn from this podcast. There is no other way out than working on you.
And here's the thing. You're either going to have to do it reactively or proactively. I'd much rather work on myself before a doctor tells me, hey, just so you know, you're pre-diabetic, so we're going to need to get your diet under control. Or we're going to need to put you on medication for the rest of your life if you don't get this in order. Like, I don't want to get to that point where I'm there and I'm stuck on a drug for forever.
So even if you're...
And that's just me with fitness and health and our nutrition, and like, that's just my thought there. And I always think like my outcomes, my achievements in life are a direct reflection of how evolved I am as a human being. If I can continue to learn and to grow and to take in more information and apply it, I'm going to accelerate my life faster than the person that's not.
Yeah. So even if you're sitting at home by yourself, let's say you have no family left, they've all died. You have no dogs, no significant other, and no friends. The absence of you on this planet is still very important. It still affects people. You matter. You matter at a level that is untold. Like, you are very important. And because you're very important, and because you matter so much, the only person that can save somebody that's that important is you. That's it. And it's moving to me because it's so vital that you learn that. Like, if I look back at my life and bad decisions I made them avoiding responsibility. Distilled down, every bad decision I've ever made is avoidance of responsibility. I didn't want to be held accountable for those things, so I avoided it. I didn't want to do the things that needed to be done, so I avoided it, which created havoc and pain for a lot of people. But you can avoid those by learning that you have the answer. You already own it. That's why I think it's so funny when we chase all these rabbits and what's the secret sauce to sales and what's the secret sauce to relationships. It's like, just start asking yourself the question, am I being the best version of myself possible in this right now? And am I doing all the things possible to be the best? Your answer is going to be no, first off, and you can do something about that. You're the only one that has the power to do it. But I do believe you have to hire a coach because this is huge. This is very heavy and hard to unpack. And we live in a world that says, oh, don't worry about it. Just apply grace. Oh, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. Everybody else does it. I started drinking whenever I would be upset. I'd come home. I'd have a bad day at work. I'd have a fight with my girlfriend. I'd have angry conversation with my ex-wife or my kids. And the first thing I would do is sit on the couch and crack open a PBR. I answered problems in my life with laziness and alcohol. And I thought, why is this not fixing itself? I answered it with laziness and alcohol.
I think it's a common... I mean, that's what I'm saying with the brain stuff, because cracking open that beer released dopamine. Avoiding the challenges release dopamine.
So our body lives in this state of wanting to protect ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
It's a constant state of avoiding potential pain and injury.
Yep.
It will avoid conflict of any kind to your detriment.
Yep.
So this is why we can circle back and go back to the diet, because this is why it is absolutely vital that you feed this thing healthy food, healthy information, train it, beat it into submission, literally beat your body into submission, train it hard, vigorously, because it needs it. It's the only way it'll pay attention. It's vital that you do this so you can understand the situations you're in and make good decisions. Yep. We are past the point now of living in the Stone Age where we just didn't fucking know. I would be hard pressed to find something that I can't find an answer for on the internet 100 times over with 100 different answers.
I mean, now that there's AI, there's literally no question you can't find an answer to.
There's probably not going to be one you can't find for your current issues in life. Yeah. So,
I mean, hell, Haley had ChatGPT create her a diet according to her macros and the foods that she liked. So now, if you're sitting there saying, "Oh, I don't know what's healthy, or I don't know what to eat," go ask ChatGPT. It's free. You can get a meal plan for free.
Even if it's not. We
do it. We do it also. You can pay us, or you can get ChatGPT to do it for you for free. I don't know about you, but
free is a pretty awesome number.
$3.99 is awesome.
I just think we have to be real honest with ourselves, and I think that's the part of society that is being pushed back on really hard. I've always been the kind of guy that if everybody's running in one direction, I ask the question first and foremost, why the fuck are we running in this direction?
Yeah.
So I understand that I'm a little bit weird. I like to also squat till my nose bleeds. I understand that that's strange. So I'm the guy that pushes against the grain regardless. But you're going to have to give yourself a little bit of gumption here. You're going to have to grow up a little bit. We have to put our big boy pants on when we wake up in the morning and present ourselves to life as a warrior, as somebody that's going to battle back against it.
Well, we also have to ask, speaking of going against the grain, are you trying to fit in with the average, or do you want to have an above average life? Because the majority of people are unhappy, overweight, over medicated, and miserable. And it's is that what you're trying to fit in with?
Because all you got to do is stop.
I think we need to aspire higher.
There's a YouTube video called Welcome to the Grind that I think is so cool. One of the phrases in it is, we'll put a link on the show notes to it because it's so good. One of the phrases in it is, average is here waiting for you to sweep you away like a river. All you have to do is pick up your feet. You just have to relax. Not just relax. You just have to lean into it. And it'll take you away, man. You're gone. Mm-hmm. And the issue is there's a waterfall and you can't stand up and see it because you're just fucking relaxing. This world isn't built for you to just mull through and just relax your way down the lazy river. That doesn't exist. The human system literally grows when it's pressed on. There's no other calculation you need to make other than push yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way things grow. Our brain literally grows when we learn.
But it will tell you it doesn't like it. That's the thing. You have to just know that your brain is telling you, hey, let's stay safe. Let's avoid risk. We will avoid pain and seek pleasure because that is how our brain is hardwired.
Because it's hardwired for, I don't know, whatever you believe in, millions of years of literally running away from the bear. In 1920, we were getting ground up in machine equipment. We were getting paid 25 cents an hour or 10 cents an hour to build widgets. That doesn't exist anymore. We don't live in that world. So we can't listen to the body that is built on keeping us away from anything that stresses us. Pressure is happiness. Pressure, action, and vision equal happiness.
Well, and we also have to take a look at what we're interpreting as stressful. Because if you're interpreting doing the laundry as stressful,
You're toast, man.
I mean, look at where we came from as human beings. We didn't have clothes. People had to kill animals to make some, like, raccoon skirts or something.
Yeah.
And we're complaining or we're stressed out because we have to do laundry in a machine that requires us to push a couple buttons and drop a pot in and set it and forget it.
So the only reason you exist, this is what I always thought was really neat. That's why I love my lineage, because I can go back and find my Scottish lineage. The only reason we exist is because the people before us were the higher performers. Right? The higher performers lived. The lower performers died. You're a product of high performers. All of us. Mm-hmm. Every one of us. The lower performers died in battle, died of sickness, died of disease, died of whatever. Higher performers made it. You don't have the choice to tell everybody below you that it doesn't fucking matter that they worked their ass off, that they stayed through the diseases, that they fought the battles, that they rode the horses into victory. You don't have a fucking choice to look at all of them and say, you know what, man, I'd rather just stay in bed. These Twinkies taste great. These Ho-Hos taste awesome. And you know what? I haven't watched Schitt's Creek 15 times today, so I'd rather just do that. You don't have that choice. You can make it, but at the end of the day, it equals misery. Mm-hmm. It equals misery because you're riding on the success of all of the people before you that were victors, that were warriors, that made it through life, that trudged the shit to get you to where you are. So no, I think personal responsibility is this thing that's been presented to us because we live in modern society. You didn't have that choice earlier on. You couldn't say, well, I just don't feel like tilling the field today because I'd rather sit around. You died if you didn't till the field. You died if you didn't slaughter the cattle. You died if you didn't do the things. So personal responsibility is really like a first world problem.
It is. It is because we have so much convenience that we have gotten accustomed to instant gratification and immediate reward. And that's just not the way most things work.
Well, it's not the way great things work.
That's right.
It's not the way success works. And you're never going to find success through laziness. So it's just not how it works. Yeah. And if it's not how it works, you can't cheat the system. You can try. And you can seek pleasure. It's like seeking happiness. I posted it about on my LinkedIn this morning. I think it was actually a Jordan Peterson quote. It's a luxury, like a luxury car or a luxury house, a luxury to pursue what makes you happy. It's a moral obligation to pursue what you find meaningful. So if we dissect that at all, you have a moral obligation to be useful and help society with something that's meaningful. If you do that, you then earn the right to chase happiness. You have to earn it. Luxuries aren't gifts. Luxuries are earned. Luxuries are high-end earned items. The reason why a luxury vehicle is $200,000 is because it's not for everybody. I'm not saying happiness isn't for everybody. Happiness is not for the people that chase happiness. Happiness is for the people that chase meaning and value and worth and earn it. That's why happiness is fleeting, because if we buy the new car, what happens 6 months after we buy the new car? It's not new anymore. You're not happy about it anymore. It's just it's a part of your life like everything else.
The excitement wears off.
Exactly. But if you've earned the things, your Jeep, you earned that. You worked hard for that fucking thing. How many times do you get in and you're like, man, I love this Jeep?
All the time, every day.
Yeah.
I love that thing.
But you earned it. You earned it. You created value in your life, my life, the dog's lives, my children's lives, anybody that's ever talked to you's life. You created value. You have meaning behind your actions. and you created happiness that allowed you to have that luxury. And it means something to you. We just need more of that, right? That should be the chase. The chase should be value and meaning. The chase should be hard things, you know? And then if we fall into happiness throughout it, awesome. I've literally cried in the squat rack because I just hurt. Like everything hurt, but I was going to do it. I was going to make it through this. I've ripped quarter-size holes out of my hands. I've bled through my fucking gym shorts. Like, shit has happened, man. I've ripped entire pieces of skin off my legs for Atlas stones and did 4 more reps. It's the happiest I've ever been doing that shit. Learning that moment, I'm like, wow, this is great. But it requires the pressure and the pain, right? It requires it. So when we talk about personal responsibility, we can't equate it to happiness. We have to equate it to the strive for something great.
Meaningful.
Yes, it has to be meaningful. Strive for something meaningful. And then we can fall into happiness. Then we can find that. Then we can say, you know what? I'm going to apply some grace to myself. I mean, I apply grace to myself all the time when I'm lifting. But I'm still struggling. I'm still pushing myself. I'm still striving. I still see myself better in the future than I am now. So when I talk about personal responsibility with every fucking client and all the time on this podcast, all of these things go through my head. Am I applying more grace to myself than the world will? The world's a harsh place.
That's a good question.
I can't ask the world to be as nice to me as I am because it don't matter.
Yeah.
Right? When I die, the world keeps spinning. So who am I to say that I deserve more grace than the world will apply to me?
Thanks for listening to Redefining Resilience.
To learn more about building your mental and physical readiness, check out odysseyresilience.org.
And follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.